Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So this is going to be a new series that I'm starting here on my channel, and it's all about true crime in Japan. I've watched many other true crime YouTubers and I felt really inspired by them to do a true crime series here in Japan. This is very different from what I usually do on this channel, but if you guys do enjoy, let me know. I do want to make sure that I am always respectful towards the victims and their families and their friends and stuff like that, because this is real crime, this is real people. But at the same time, I want to let people know about the dangers. And you know, living in Japan, we can kind of get this false sense of security that nothing ever bad happens here, but I would like to share these stories just to show you that crime does happen everywhere and it's always important to stay vigilant. So for my very first true crime video, I've decided to cover a story that happened quite recently actually, and in my area, in my prefecture and the prefecture over from me in Osaka. This is the devastating story about Saki Kondo. This crime took place in the Kansai area in early 2018. First, I want to talk about the victim in this case. Saki was a 27-year-old Japanese national. She was a proficient English speaker with a friendly personality. During university, she actually studied overseas to further her English ability and eventually came back to Japan. Saki was originally from Himeji City, but she moved to Sunda City a couple years prior for a new job. Her English ability actually allowed her to do an executive level job doing interpreting, so she was pretty successful at her job. So on Thursday, 15th of February 2018, Saki told her co-workers that day that she was going to go into Osaka to meet a man called Jay. She mentioned that he was American and they had actually met before. The man she was meeting was actually called Yevgeny Bayraktar. He was an American, but he was actually born to a Russian mother and a Bulgarian father. However, he was born in the Ukraine. His parents' relationship didn't actually work out when he was a child, so his mother actually signed up to a Ukrainian mail order bride site, and after a little while she actually met an American man. He's an engineer in Texas. He ended up going over to the Ukraine, meeting her and Bayraktar, and he actually ended up bringing them back to the States on a K1 fiance visa along with Bayraktar when he was a young child. Bayraktar was about 10 or 11 at the time when he moved to the United States. Bayraktar's mother is called Regina and Bayraktar's new stepdad is called Daisy. In the year 2000, Regina and Daisy married at the Texas City Hall and they officially became Americans. I don't know how that works, but I guess marriage, you know, lets them live in America and just be American. So they lived a usual American life. Daisy supported both of them throughout their life in America. He actually paid for Regina to go through nursing school. Daisy did notice that Regina and Bayraktar had a very, very close relationship, almost, well, it was a bit unusual. He thought they were very, very close, and he was a very, very coddled and spoilt child. For example, when they would be having dinner, if Bayraktar didn't like the food that was given to them as they were eating, he would speak up about his concern about not liking the food, and Regina would get up in the middle of the dinner and go cook him something that he wants. And this was at a time where Daisy was working and he was paying for all of them, putting Regina through nursing school, so obviously he didn't have a lot of money, so you know, wasting food like that really kind of rubbed him the wrong way, because you know, he was just being spoiled and also at the same time just wasting money. But Regina didn't seem to care as long as Bayraktar was happy. Bayraktar was described as terribly shy and awkward. He enjoyed playing video games and mostly kept to himself, but he did have friends and he was kind to animals. So Regina studied at nursing school for 4 years. Soon after Regina graduated from nursing school, she was away out of state on a business trip, and she'd actually taken Bayraktar with her, and she actually completely disappeared from Daisy's life. Daisy was absolutely devastated. Obviously, his wife had essentially ghosted him. Daisy had no contact with Regina until a couple years later when she contacted him asking about divorce papers, and he found out that they had actually moved to Long Island in New York, and she had moved in with another American engineer. She'd been working as a nurse at a Hamptons rehab facility, and she was planning to marry this new man who she is still with to this day. Daisy was obviously completely devastated by this. He describes her as a terrible, selfish woman, and he said, quote, "It was the most devastating time of my life." Just a side note, I think this is a really common thing with mail order bridesites. I do believe that a lot of them are obviously in for the wrong reasons, and they just want to get to America so they can have the money and the support and get away from their country where they might not have the same opportunities. And as soon as they're kind of back on their feet again, they'll most likely leave the husband because they never really liked him in the first place. They just liked being supported. So the fact that she left after she finished nursing school is not surprising, but I can imagine how that affected Bayraktar. It would have been really hard. So Bayraktar attended William Floyd High School starting in 2007. This was in Mastic Beach in New York. Even though Bayraktar moved to the US with his mum, he still kept in contact with his Bulgarian doctor dad, and he did send some money from time to time. After Bayraktar left high school, he actually joined the American Air Force, but he was actually discharged after only 9 months out of the 4 years he was supposed to be contracted for. No one knows why he was discharged because that's like personal information. No one could access that, but that is quite unusual to be discharged early. So let's skip forward to 2018 when Bayraktar came to Japan on a tourist 90-day visa. He came in January and was staying around Airbnbs in the Kansai area of Japan. He spent his time on dating apps like Tinder and spent his time meeting several different Japanese women over this time. So unfortunately, this is exactly how he met the victim in this case, Saki Kondo. This very unfortunate story starts on the 15th of February when Saki had told her co-workers that she was going into Osaka to meet Bayraktar. So keep in mind, this was not the first time they had met. They had met prior to this before. It is unknown how many times, but they had met before this day. So Saki finished work on Thursday the 15th of February, and she caught a train from Sanda station into Osaka station. So she went to Osaka and she met with Bayraktar and perhaps went to dinner or something of that nature. They were spotted on a security camera at JR Morinomiya station at midnight, and soon after that they were again caught on camera entering a private residence in Osaka's Higashinari ward just after midnight. Because reports don't actually state what time they had met or what time she came into Osaka, I'm unsure what they did for that night, or whether the first time they'd actually met that night was at midnight at Morinomiya station. I'm not sure if they went to dinner before that. I just don't know. So there are some theories why I think that Saki decided to stay at his place that night, because you know she did have work in the morning, and Sanda is like a good, probably like an hour 20 minutes away from where she was, and that's a long way to go to get back to Sanda, get ready for work and all that, you know. That's a long way to go. So I have 3 theories why she might have done what she did. So the first possibility is that she'd actually planned on staying there. She maybe went home after work and got all of her stuff ready and then headed into the city, and that meant like the next day she could just get ready at the Airbnb and just head straight into work. That's a possibility, that she actually planned to stay there from the start. The second possibility is that maybe she missed her train back to Sanda. The last train leaves from 12:13 from Osaka station back to Sanda station, so that's pretty early, you know. That would be a pretty easy train to miss. So maybe she was never supposed to stay there, but she had no choice at that point. The third possibility is that she had no intention of staying the night when she left for the date, but Bayraktar somehow convinced her to stay the night at his place. So the night passed and the morning passed, and Saki was due to arrive at work at 8 o'clock the next day on Friday. However, she never arrived. This was really uncharacteristic of her, especially in Japan. No one really skips work, or no one really, you know, doesn't go to work. They would at least call in advance if they were not going to be there. So this was very unusual, and her work ended up calling her parents to let them know that she never turned up for work that day. No one could get in contact with her because her phone had been switched off or it had gone dead. She was eventually reported missing to the Hyogo Prefecture Police the next day on Saturday the 17th of February. The police got to work immediately. They received a tip from her co-workers saying that she was going to go meet some American guy named Jay. So they tried to track her movements using the security cameras all the way from Sanda Station into Osaka City. So they found the Higashinari private residence security footage, like the security camera outside the Airbnb, and noticed that they did enter together at just after midnight, and they continue watching the footage. I'm not sure when they did get this footage, but it would have been a couple days later. But they did notice that they went in together and then she never came back out. He was seen coming out multiple times the next day, but she never came out. She never left. So yeah, Bayraktar left the apartment a few times that day. He was holding a large bag. Saki was never seen on that footage ever again. After days of collecting evidence, on Thursday the 22nd of February, the Hyogo Prefecture Police arrested Bayraktar in Nara Prefecture on suspicion of confining Saki to the Higashinari Airbnb. At this point, the police still had no idea what happened to Saki. All they know is that she entered this apartment and she never came out. Upon Bayraktar's arrest, he denied all allegations. On the same day, the police searched the Higashinari Airbnb. However, Saki was not found inside. This was definitely very alarming for the police to find that there was no one in there, because they knew there was no way that she could have left without being seen by a security camera. So at this point, the police were even more certain that they were dealing with a homicide case. Bayraktar was immediately brought into questioning on the 22nd of February, but he refused to answer any questions. During this time, the police were still running their own investigations, and they found out that Bayraktar had actually reserved and was staying at a different Osaka Airbnb. This Airbnb was located in Osaka's Nishinari area. This area is well known to have a lot of private residences like Airbnbs and stuff like that for super cheap. A couple of days later, on the 24th of February, the police actually gained a warrant to search that Airbnb. When they entered, they did notice that quite a significant amount of air freshener had been sprayed, which is kind of unusual because, you know, he hadn't been in that room for 2 days. So the fact that they could still smell air freshener kind of shows you how much he sprayed, you know. So yeah, they carefully searched around the apartment, and very, very unfortunately, they found a human head inside of his suitcase. After this gruesome discovery, the police interrogated Bayraktar more, and he was informed about the discovery in his Nishinari Airbnb. The next day, on the 25th of February, Bayraktar actually confessed to knowing what had happened. Bayraktar confessed to knowing what happened on that night of 15th of February. He said that shortly after they entered the apartment together, he actually strangled Saki to death. It is unknown the nature of the strangulation, but Bayraktar claims it was an accident and he didn't mean to kill her. I do have some theories about what I think happened with the strangulation. My first theory is that he did mean to kill her. Maybe she wasn't being submissive to his requests. Maybe he wanted to get physical, but she refused. Maybe she said something that set him off and some kind of rage became of him, so he killed her. My second theory is that they were having consensual or non-consensual intercourse, and maybe it was some kind of fantasy to strangle her, and either by accident or on purpose he strangled Saki to death. You know, you can do this on purpose because some people really like that power of having someone's life in their hands and actually killing someone. It's like a sexual fantasy. But the other one could be they were just messing around and he really did accidentally strangle her. In my opinion, I do think he purposely strangled her to death. I think it was some kind of fantasy. Let me know what you guys think down below, but that's what I think. So it continues on. Remember, there was a head found in his apartment, so obviously there's more to the story. So after she was strangled, he shockingly dismembered her body with a sharp knife or saw. It is unknown which he used, but he did that in the bathroom of his Higashinari Airbnb. After this, he traveled around the Kansai area to dispose of her body parts. He put them into a large bag and made several trips and deposited her body parts in multiple semi-rural areas. This has also been confirmed by security footage capturing him entering and exiting stations with a bag. So yeah, that's crazy to me, the fact that he was riding these trains next to people, and these trains can be busy, you know, and he had a bag with dismembered body parts of a human inside. It's just so sickening and crazy to me. Her arms were found side by side in the mountains of Shimamoto, a town in Osaka Prefecture. They were under a light covering of soil, and they were found about 550 meters away from her buried torso, which was also covered with some light soil. Her legs were found in a wooded area of Kyoto's Yamashina ward. When they were found, they had been clearly severed with a sharp knife or a saw. It is unknown what truly happened in that Airbnb on the night of the 15th of February, but devastatingly, he was actually not charged for murder in this case. He was only charged with a manslaughter charge and the dismember and abandonment of a human corpse. They didn't charge him with murder because there was actually no proof of him committing murder. He did say it was an accident, and they had no proof beyond that. So that's just awful to hear, that after this huge monstrous act he only got a manslaughter charge. And like I was saying earlier, in my opinion, I do think it was murder. I think he was trying to fulfill his own sexual fantasy. I think this is something that he's been thinking about for a long time. I don't think he planned to do this, but I think at the time he just felt like it was the right time to do it and the perfect opportunity. I do say that I don't think he had planned for it at this specific time, is because he didn't actually have a plan to get rid of her body, because on that night he actually searched on the internet how to dismember a human corpse. So he had never researched into this before. I think he just did it. I think he pounced on the opportunity, and he kind of was like, shit, now I've got this dead body here and I have to deal with it accordingly. But yeah, I do think it was murder. I think it was a selfish reason. I think it was for sexual fantasy. I do think he's had a hard life. I do think he's got mental issues regarding his home life and his just growing up in general, but that is absolutely no excuse for killing someone. There's many people in this world who have mental illness and mental problems and stuff like that, but they don't go out and kill people, you know. So he is disgusting. So the trial began and the prosecution were asking for 13 years in prison. Prosecutors told the court that Bayraktar had tried to conceal evidence. He had unmatched Saki from Tinder and deleted the app completely. And like I said before, he'd also searched on the internet how to dismember a human corpse. And he actually, on that morning, he had actually gone out to a store to buy either a sharp knife or a saw. I'm not sure which one it was, but he purchased that weapon to use that morning to cut up her body. However, Bayraktar's defense were asking for only just 5 years. Their defense was saying that he was remorseful and he didn't mean to kill her, and the fact that he led the police to her body part. During the trial, Bayraktar said, and I quote, "I will be burdened with this crime until the day I die. I'm so sorry." Bayraktar was sentenced on January 22nd of this year, 2019, in a Hyogo Prefecture court. He was very disgustingly sentenced to only 8 years in prison. The charge was for manslaughter and the dismemberment and abandonment of a human corpse. 8 years. 8 years in prison. 8. So Saki's father was obviously extremely upset about the length of time in the prison. He said it's not enough for what he did, and I totally agree. He also said that the truth still hasn't been uncovered about what actually happened in that Airbnb, and I totally agree with him as well. I don't think it was manslaughter. I think he did mean to kill her. And I also think it's absolutely disgusting that he actually went ahead and did try to conceal what he did. He cut up her body and spread her body parts around the area. If someone truly had any kind of remorse for what they did, if they accidentally killed someone, they would call the police. They wouldn't go out and buy a knife and cut her up into pieces. You know, that is not remorse at all. That's just trying to get away with what you've done. So yeah, after 8 years, he's gonna be only 35 years old. He's got his whole life ahead of him at that age. That's not an old age. And who's to say that he won't do something like this again? you know? It's so dangerous and so scary that he's going to be let out at this time. He's free to go on Tinder again, and the fact that none of these women know that he's actually killed someone that he's been on a date with is so dangerous. I really think the courts are letting the public down. It's terrible. It's so dangerous. I really hope nothing bad happens with him ever again. I really do. So it is unknown which prison Bayraktar will be serving his time, but it's most likely going to be at Fuchu prison, which is in a suburban area northwest of central Tokyo. It is the largest prison in Japan, and that's also where most of the foreign inmates spend their time. He will be released in the year 2027, which is not far away at all. So I want to end this video by sending love to Saki's family, her friends, her colleagues. She did not deserve to be taken away like this. She was stolen from you. And I'm so sorry that this happened, and the fact that, you know, Saki barely got any proper justice from this is beyond devastating and heartbreaking, and I'm so sorry. And I really hope that, you know, they're able to find peace with the situation. Yeah, it's just a devastating thing. So this is the end of my first true crime video. Let me know if you want me to cover some more true crime stories in the future, and leave any comments or thoughts down below. Thanks guys for watching.